So we are very fortunate to be hearing from a group of very diverse and talented individuals working in arts and administration. Our guest speakers are going to be sharing their experiences pursuing a career in arts admin and management, a very exciting and facet of working in the arts that some people come across as they explore their own art practice, or in other instances pursue very intentionally given their particular skill sets and competencies. So I'm very pleased to welcome and introduce our guest speakers for today's session. Among our panelists are Yash Chhabria with the Stratford Festival, Andreja Kovač with Crane's Creation Theatre Company, and Cecília Garcia, our Senior Program Manager with North York Arts. Kicking us off and moderating today's panel session is Parul Pandya, who work in culture, has been very fortunate to work with on a number of occasions, and she's the founder and community consultant with Community Impact Consulting. And so in terms of today's agenda, we're going to be starting off with Parul, who's going to be leading us through a short presentation to start framing this discussion by speaking to her experience as someone who has worked in a variety of different roles and capacities within the arts. Then we'll move on to presentations from our panelists so you can get to know them and other kind of career areas of the sector. And from there, Parul will lead our guest speakers through a panel discussion to really focus on where the challenges and barriers as well as opportunities may exist for newcomers, immigrants and refugees interested in pursuing a career in arts administration. We're also joined today, you might have heard in the background, by my very spirited dog, Jelly Bean, who is indicating to me that I've probably talked for just a tad too long. So I think this is probably a perfect opportunity to pass things over to Parul so that she can take it away and lead us through the content. Over to you, Parul.
Thank you so much, Steph. I really appreciate it. And hello, everyone. And before I get started, I just want to say that cameos by cute fuzzy fur friends are always welcome. And I'm sure many of us have experienced them over the last month. So good day, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you. My name is Parul Pandya. I use she, her pronouns. First and foremost, I just want to thank Work and Culture for the opportunity to guide this panel through a conversation. It's a work that is very dear to my heart, as Work and Culture is very, very much aware. And these are really needed and important discussions, and not only discussions, but coming togetherness. We all need to gather and collect, in our community. So thank you for this opportunity to come together in this sort of way. It's a really interesting discussion we're going to have today, talking about arts and administration and how that all kind of comes together. And as Steph mentioned, to ground our conversation, I really wanted to give you a little bit of insight about myself. I have been working in the art sector now for about 25 years. And through that, I've had a variety of challenging experiences as well as very fulfilling experiences. But what was it that led me to a career in the arts? Well, I'll be honest with you, it was kind of by accident. So, my work as a young person when I was about 18 years old really started with advocacy in the queer community. I myself identify as a South Asian queer woman. And so for me, the opportunity, really arose where I was able to take a place and spread some word around, myself and my experiences through my writing. And writing is like the core of who I am and is a passion of mine. So a lot of my arts work really happened accidentally and through the avenue of advocacy. Because from when I was a young one to, when I was a teenager and throughout my 20s and continuing today, I am an enthusiastic advocate. I really truly do believe that each of us has a voice that can make an impact. And where I was able to find a home for my voice and mechanisms of which to, work with communities, that was found in the arts. So in fact, my advocacy is what led me to the arts. And that role has been such a fulfilling, or the roles that I've taken over in the last 25 years have been so fulfilling to me. Anything from working with small grassroots organizations, arts organizations, to mid to large size arts organizations. And all of those experiences have been very vital towards creating me and giving me the knowledge that I believe I do possess now in terms of doing this work in an effective and equitable way. So what is it that appealed to me about the arts, and what helped me to achieve this success in the arts? Well, I would definitely say it really takes a lot of commitment on a personal level. I think one of the things that really aided my process was my unapologetic approach towards making connections. As many of you know and will grow to know, Toronto specifically is very much an arts community that's interconnected. So for me, starting at an organization that as many may be familiar with in the city called Harbourfront Center, which was my first arts job, I realized immediately the importance of making connections, both with my coworkers and peers, but as well as the people we were serving through the programming and connecting with through the programming that we were offering. So it is essential. It is extremely essential that you set up networks with your peers, with the communities that you hope or you are already serving. And, I think it goes back to something that I truly believe in, that relationships that are built in reciprocity, that is that they go both ways, really do create an opportunity and open up the pathway towards establishing a relationship of collaboration and exchange in a fair way. Because we have to understand historically, a lot of the communities that I tend to work with are equity-seeking communities, much like newcomers. So those communities haven't really been given the time, the space, or the effort to really actually determine their own needs. A lot of that time, those needs were really prescribed to them. So I understood at this moment in my journey that it was essentially important that I took the time to listen, that I took the time not only to listen, but to listen well from a variety of community members about what they were doing and what they needed and how they wanted to engage with creativity and the arts. And this has led me to, as I mentioned, a variety of roles over the past years. I'd love to focus on the present because there's a lot of, I can relate to a lot of about the past, but I'd love to move into, where I feel I'm at today. And that is, something I don't take for granted, and that is being considered a leader in the sector. And I take that with, such serious responsibility, but I also take joy in it. I take extreme joy in it. And that is because for me, leadership is aligned with creativity. Leadership needs creativity, in fact. Many of you may be familiar with the concept of creative leadership, and that really speaks to some of those ideas that I've already mentioned. It's about building relationships. It's about taking the time and the care to get to know the people and the communities that we're serving, but also taking the time within our organizations to develop the programs and the content that we are offering to communities. And adjacent to that, it's also very important that we learn to care for each other, that we learn to care for each other with, with a reverence and appreciation for our differences and our similarities. Because I think many of you will relate to this, as I myself was an immigrant to this country, many years ago now, over 35 years ago. But I remember that, and I remember when I arrived, how much the experience really, was overwhelming. It was overwhelming because you were trying to fit into Canadian culture. But I can say this. I think that caring for the people that we work with through our arts work really is about embracing them wholly as they come and allowing them to also align with the areas of Canadian culture and society that actually resonate with them. One thing I want to emphasize is that you come complete, you come whole. And I felt really encouraged as I've moved through my arts career to honor my voice, to honor who it is that I am, and to celebrate my uniqueness. So with that being said, I encourage you to do the same. Some of you may be more confident in your voices and your places and your spaces at this time. Some of you may still be seeking out what that pathway looks like. Take your time. There's no rush in the process. We all grow as human beings. And this has led me to a variety of different options and opportunities, including being an educator, not only in a variety of community spaces, but formally in spaces such as Humber College and Centennial College. And what I have learned from my students and continuously learn from my students is that listening and learning and responding are always applicable. There's no time to pause. And we have to approach those three different aspects with care and reverence, as I've mentioned before. So why is arts and culture a sector that is viable and rewarding for newcomers? Well, I truly believe it's for the reason that I've already cited, which is we have so much to learn from you. You bring such an immense amount of wealth, knowledge, understanding, and even different approaches, maybe sometimes even innovative approaches from your own lived experiences. So in fact, Canada invites you with open arms to take the place and the space within the arts and culture sector, because you are what makes the arts and culture sector what it is today, which is something that is accessible, meaningful, and very much predominant in the lives of many people who appreciate such things as arts and creativity. So with that being said, it is important that we continue to amplify the voices of those that make up the cultural fabric of Canada, such as you, the immigrants, the refugees, the newcomers. This is what Canada's about. And so with that being said, I think that I will leave it there for today and, open up to some discussion with an exceptional group of panelists who have their own experiences to share and maybe are a little closer to being newcomers in the sense of how long they have been in Canada, versus my 30 plus years at this point. And I would love to be able to invite our amazing panelists, Yash, Andrea, and Cecília, to share a little bit about themselves and their own journeys. I think that from learning about each other's journeys, we again gain respect for each other's pathways, but we also realize that maybe we're not as different as we thought we were. So perhaps first I will start with Yash. Yash, can I invite you into space when you're ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you for the introduction and just taking us over the things that we're going to discuss. My name is Yash and my pronouns are he, him. I'll quickly share my screen so that you can see some visual elements. Should be up now. Yeah, so as I mentioned, my name is Yash and I consider myself as an arts manager. Like a couple of months from now, like I was still kind of like confused, like, am I like an arts manager? Do I work as an art administrator? Because back in my home country, this is not as like one of the career like options that people would have. People would just work, even though they're doing work of an art administrator, but there isn't like a concept that is around and like people won't be talking about that thing. So since like a couple of years, I've been working with film festivals and theater companies, coordinating artists and arts communities. Currently, I'm working with Stratford Festival as their digital content manager, managing their streaming platform Stratford at Home, where we show digital content, theater-related content, films, podcasts, and audio plays. So basically, my role with them is to manage the third-party content and licenses. And the reason why I love my job is every day I get to do something new. Like today I'm working with the education department. Tomorrow I'll be like, working with the EDI and accessibility department, because if we are showing digital content, it's all about like how accessible the content is for different audiences. So that's why I really like my job as yeah. So starting with like, how did I end up here? So I did my undergrad I was a journalism student back home, but I was still figuring things out. Uh, as a kid, the first thing you would do is go to your parents for advice, and I was a confused child. So like with limited knowledge, my parents were like, you could do whatever you want to. Like they didn't have like anything particular like to guide me. They're like, just figure it out. So I'm like, okay, just let's pick up something and let's figure it on my own. So I did journalism. uh, I didn't pursue that as a career because of the political atmosphere that was there, but it actually helped me in, it helped me set a like a process in terms of like how to see the duality of things that happens. So it helped me like, condition a certain way, looking things and analyzing things. And as I said, I was a confused child, so I was like, okay, I'm doing multiple things. So also let's do VFX, but that was a thing like that wasn't for me because it is a demanding job. And uh, initially I was interested in that because I was making some digital content using Adobe Suite. It's kind of like, cool thing to learn like initially, but as and when you go into the VFX industry, making those models, it's not easy. So I'm like, this is the thing that's not for me. Like maybe I prefer something that's like, going out and doing stuff on your own and figuring things out. And accidentally, I went into film and theater. So I was just doing an internship, and after completing my internship, I just made a phone call to one of my friends and like just to check like, how they're doing. And they mentioned like the Mumbai Film Festival is like, hiring for interns. I was like, sure, let's do that. And like the next day I went for an interview and I got selected. So I started working with them as marketing and communications intern. So that's where my journey as an arts administrator started. And after that, I joined them like on a full-time basis. And since then, I have worked with a couple of companies. I've volunteered with Toronto International Film Festival. I've worked on a contractual basis with Mass Culture. I did my placement at Inside Out. I did a contractual work with Hot Dogs Film Festival. So it's kind of like, step-by-step things. And I would say yes to like all the opportunities that would come to me. And that has kind of helped me in learning from different departments and different kinds of people I have come across. So yeah, this is just a picture. Like it gives me like, reminds me of the things that I've done and things that you have like, achieved, because there would be a time where you'd be thinking like, have you done enough? So you just look at those pictures and think like, yeah, probably, maybe. And so yeah, this is my contact information. Like at the end of the session, if people still have questions, they like, you could just take a note of it, and I'll just keep it for a second. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Yash. And I think that, what you've shared so generously is going to resonate with many of us that are here on the call today. Taking your time, really figuring it out. I can relate. And the fact that sometimes, culturally, again, these are not areas of, or professions that are necessarily viable in our homelands. So we come to Canada with an opportunity and a hope. So I think just show your demonstration of just your achievements is very exciting to this group, and congratulations on everything you've achieved, and we look forward to seeing what's next for you, Yash.
Yeah.
Next, I'm going to invite Cecília when she is ready. Hi, Cecília. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Parul. Okay, I am. Let me share my screen, and then I'm going to be ready. Okay, here we go. Okay, so it's so funny how our stories are all, all have similar points. I'm from Brazil. I moved to Canada in 2014. So it's been almost 10 years. So it's been a little while. But I wanted to, as I was thinking about this, I was like, I feel that the part that's really important that we don't sometimes talk about so much is like the beginnings, the hard beginnings, the messy middles, the like, you know, all of the things you, as Yash mentioned a little bit, like all of the contract jobs, all of the volunteering, all of the kind of like stacking things together that then makes, you know, takes you where it takes you. So I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable and go through a bit of like, you know, the messy middles and the hard beginnings and things like that as much as possible in 5 minutes. So I'm from Brazil. I did a bachelor in film studies. I worked in the film industry for 4 years, built a career for myself in film. I was a set decorator, so art director, set decorator, prop design, still those kind of things, and kind of moved to Canada by accident. My partner at the time, husband now, got an opportunity to do his PhD here, and I was like, why not? I was in a really good place in my career, but was at the same time a little bit burned out, as the film industry can do to you. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. It's 4 years. We'll come back after that. That was the initial plan. So we moved to London, Ontario, not Toronto. Some of you might know this, some of you might not. London does not have a film industry at all. I know, I looked, I tried. So I knocked on the doors of a few theaters and was like, you know, scenography, set decor, theaters have that too. At the time, the community theater that was in London had built all of their sets already for the season. So I was like, well, maybe there's something else I can do here. I need to work on my English. I want to make connections. I need to like figure out what I'm going to do here, as Yash mentioned. Do I still want to do what I used to do? Do I want to make a change, you know, take advantage of this? So I started to volunteer at this tiny community theater, Palace Theater, with lovely people. And just by having conversations, I found out, as Yash said, like I had no idea about arts management. I didn't know that was a career or a thing you could do. Found out about it, found out that Western in London had a pretty good program at the time. And I've added some dates for context because I think that's so important. This program doesn't even exist anymore. So we did the program, did my internship, came to Toronto, did my internship at North York Arts. And then this is where a lot of the messy middle come in. I did a lot of volunteering, connecting with people, building things, and like doing really odd arts-related, not arts-related gigs and jobs until I landed a minimum wage job at a gallery. Not glamorous, but it was the beginning for me. It was like, at least I'm not working at Tim Hortons, which I also did for a while. And then from there, got an opportunity to come back to North York Arts part-time, was still doing part-time at the gallery and doing a lot of contract gigs with other organizations, which, you know, was hard. It was hard, not gonna lie, but it created something wonderful as well, which was connecting with a lot of really wonderful people in the art sector. Like that's something that has kept me in the sector. Like it's really the people and the connections that you build. Yeah, so fast forward to 2019, that's when I moved on to become a manager at North York Arts from 2017 to 2018 to 2019. I did the kind of like having multiple jobs at the same time. In 2019 was the first time where I was like, okay, I can actually start to let go of a few of these jobs and not have 20 jobs at the same time. And then I actually, with the free time I had, I actually started my artistic practice in textile art. So that's how I kind of became an arts administrator first, and then an artist second. And now I'm the director of programs at North York Arts, still at the same organization, and an emerging textile artist. And a lot of the connections and relations I made throughout my career, like keep coming back. And now even more as a, as an emerging artist, I get to work with a lot of these people now as an artist. So facilitating things and all of that. Yeah, my big kind of like whenever people ask like, what is your one thing that, you would advise someone? It's really to invest time and energy into building relations. And they don't have to be personal. It's okay if they're professional. They might become personal. That has happened to me a lot. You just meet really wonderful people and you want to keep in touch with them. But that's really like my first gallery job was because of a personal connection with someone I had made through volunteering. And then all opportunities after and during have always been because, I had built good relations with people and they want to help you. They want to like see you grow. And I do the same now when I meet people that are in the beginning of their careers. So that's that. You can connect with me through my North York Arts email, or if you want to talk art, you can follow me on Instagram.
Thank you so much, Cecília. And I confess I've gotten a wonderful seat to see Cecília grow over these past 10 years. I've known her from when she first arrived in Canada. So, much like I said with Yash, it's so inspirational to hear your journey, Cecília. And I also think that, as you indicated, you being honest and vulnerable through some of the things you've brought up as well, I think are important points of discussion, which maybe we can get to in our panel discussion, like low pay, contract-based work, and and the importance of understanding and gaining experience to build those relationships, but often having to do work for little, if no pay, and how those things were balanced out with you folks during the time you had to go through that period of your own growth. Thank you so much for presenting, from a place of such honesty and integrity. And again, it's just amazing. I'm sure many of your peers here will support just seeing your journey to become the big honcho at North York Arts today. So thank you for that, Cecília. Next, last but not least by any means, I would love to invite Andreja into space when you are ready.
Okay, can you hear me and see it okay? Great.
Yes, we can, thanks.
So hello, everyone. My name is Andrea, and I'm a stage director, producer, and arts administrator. And I have been doing this for a very long time in my country of origin, which is called Slovenia. And the country I come from is situated in the central of Europe. So it's kind of a bridge between Eastern Europe and Central Europe. It actually used to be a part of a different country called Yugoslavia, which then beginning of the 1990s fell apart into today 6 different countries. So as a teenager, we were going through various different things like really high inflation. During my life, I have changed 5 currencies today in the same country and various different things. But this is where I started my journey. I studied directing for stage and theater and radio at the National Conservatory, which is part of university. And we have a different school system there at the time. So it was basically an equivalent of an MFA that I did there. I was also very early on pulled into arts administration in my native country through producing, and they found that I have a knack for grant writing. And then shortly after that, I became an artistic director of a theater school and also worked on various different projects in different capacities of coordinating and things like that. So I also trained in Canada at the National Theatre School when I came here because I just didn't understand how the system here worked. So an opportunity offered itself for me to go and audition for National Theatre School, more so to just meet someone and talk about arts in Canada. But to my big surprise, I got accepted into the directing program, which only takes 2 students every 2 years. So that was actually kind of a jumping point for me to move to Canada, because before that, I was living a little bit in Slovenia, a little bit in Canada. I started coming here because I met my husband, who is Canadian, and wasn't really making the chance and the jump to come fully until the audition for NTS happened. So then I had to cut a career very abruptly. I had a lot of experience in my previous country. I've directed over 40 shows professionally in different theaters of different sizes, from Stratford to small independent theaters. And then I had to kind of make a move to Canada. And here I very quickly experienced a lack of opportunities due to my age, because I moved after I was 30. So a lot of beginner opportunities are under the age of 30. So I basically couldn't get hired for anything. It was also challenging to get hired in just like daily jobs. Like I really wanted to work in chapters, but I wouldn't get hired because none of my experience was from Canada. And the lack of Canadian experience, I know it's a very big challenge for immigrants, not just in this field, but in many other fields as well. So I literally didn't get hired pretty much anywhere. And was volunteering for different organizations in Mississauga and in Montreal. My first volunteering gig was for Pride Parade in Toronto, and we were actually painting the sidewalk. We were painting rainbows on the sidewalk at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was the best experience ever, because every single person that came and woke up and started opening their shop was thanking us, and everybody was so welcoming and so accepting. So that's a really, really nice memory for me still. One of the other challenges that I experienced here was I did not understand the way art works in Canada, specifically theater, because there is a very different business model where I come from. The way how arts works, it's not project-based. People work in repertory theaters on a full-time basis. Our shortest contract there is 1 year, while the longest contract in Canada is 8 months. So this was a challenge that was really addressed during my school years at National Theatre School, where I was finally in contact with people where I was able to ask questions, because despite the fact that I had a lot of experience, I just literally lacked an in of trying to understand how does the ecosystem here works. So once that happened, then things went a little bit different. When I was in Canada, I understood that it's going to be difficult for me to find a job with an organization. So I lived in Montreal first for 2 years before I settled in Mississauga. And when I came to Mississauga, I started my own theater company here. For the reasons I've mentioned before, it was really challenging finding a job. I also wanted to start this theater company in a city that is one of the highest proportions of immigrants in this country, and also make it a priority to create jobs for people who are coming and to be a resource for people who are coming. So we are very proud to every year employ at least 10 immigrants, and the majority of our team is immigrants to this country. And I'm very, very passionate about advocating for that cause and also offering information and employment for people, because I know how much people need that. So now my theater company in Mississauga has grown. We have 5 full-time employees. We have just taken over a 200-seat proscenium theater this year. We organize a puppet festival, and we run an 8-week-long paid employment program for artists under 30. We employ 16 artists roughly every year. We do puppetry, but we also do a traditional theater. And this is a picture from a residency we did in my home country, Slovenia. So this kind of made the circle whole, because I brought Canadian artists to Slovenia, and we spent 8 weeks there creating a puppet show using a really unique technique of 3D printing. So creating puppets in digital sculpting and then 3D printing them. So this is a picture from that process. If you'd like to connect with me, please feel free to do so. I will post the contacts in the Zoom. Just 1 sec. Getting out of this is always interesting. So here are the contacts for the company. Our addresses are also really simple. So it's just my first name at cranecreations.ca if you want to connect with me directly. And feel free to always come our way. We really want to be an open door for the immigrants from all across the world. So whatever question you have, especially if it's theater-based, anytime, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Wow, another inspiring story. How lucky are we today to get to, listen and hear and really appreciate the journeys, the different journeys that folks have taken in their integration and to get to the point where they are in their own arts careers. I, really appreciate, Andrea, that you brought up some of the barriers that were you faced coming into Canada, including, that lack of opportunities and the lack of Canadian experience. I think, again, many of us will be able to relate to that because that often is a challenge in terms of gaining experience and then ultimately gaining employment. So thank you for sharing that, with such integrity and being vulnerable, to each of you, each of the three panelists. You've shared a little piece of yourself. And so, that is always greatly appreciated. So we've had an opportunity to get to know a little bit about our panelists through their presentations. And I would love to, take on just a broad discussion now, an open discussion with our panelists, and offer a couple of questions and then ask our panelists, to chime in. The first question, I was scribbling down notes because you were all saying such wonderful things. But the first question that I'll start with is, and I do invite honesty, which has been part of the presentation so far, of course. What were some of the challenges or barriers? I know we spoke on this a little bit, Andrea touched on this, that you faced as a newcomer or an immigrant that you had to overcome in order to integrate into Canadian society. If you could maybe list off like your top one or two challenges or barriers as a newcomer that you faced in Canadian society, and maybe would someone like to kick us off with that?
I could do that because I've had like recent experiences. Like I just came to Canada. It's been a little more than a year and a half. So like the first thing for me would be like, the paperwork to just come here, those immigration documents, things that you need. Because I came here as an international student, and there are like, layers of things that you need to consider before coming here. And even you are here, you're still kind of like, scared. Are they going to send me back home? Like I'm just here to study. So it's like, those kind of things, because half your mind is like still occupied with those thoughts that's coming up. So that's why it's sometimes could act as a barrier, like for you to like progress in your the career that you want, and it also brings in certain kinds of isolation and loneliness because you are like away from your comfort zone while you are here and just figuring things on your own. So yeah, those things would be my most things.
Thank you so much, Yash. Cecília, Andrea, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, as someone who got her citizenship 2 weeks ago, I think I can relate to that. Yash, it's a long journey, and then once you finally get it, you're like, oh wow, I don't have to fill out paperwork, or at least not for that, right? Like you still got to do your taxes and stuff, but it can be a really long journey.
Thank you, Cecília. Andrea, anything to add on to that?
Yes, I agree with Yash regarding loneliness. I think sometimes if you move alone, like in my case, my whole family and friends, everybody is still back home and have no intention coming here. So it takes a long time to make friends, especially when you're an adult, and to build your circle. So I think that poses an additional level of stress and anxiety when you're already dealing with the professional part of that.
Thank you so much for offering that. And I think that's so important what you've brought up, and that is mental health and mental wellness. I mentioned off the top in my presentation, I teach in two arts programs at two different colleges here in Toronto. And many of our students are international students. So I actually get to witness, in fact, I had this conversation with Steph, I get to witness just how much that is challenging for many students. And I think the recognition of you folks speaking it into reality is so important, right? Because a lot of times we go through these challenges very independently. And, if, for example, we're coming via education, we know that that's what we want to focus on, but we still have to deal with our own well-being and take care of ourselves. So you three acknowledging that, I think, is so important. And I really do encourage anyone who may be experiencing that sort of isolation, to reach out to the arts community. We're really great in connecting and welcoming folks. And so, don't feel shy to contact any of us. If you need support, we're here to help you along your journey as well. So from there, I'd love to talk a little about, okay, now each of you have had some time here and you've had that process of integration, whether you feel like you're fully integrated, you're still in the process of integration. Regardless of that, I was wondering from your perspective and from your experiences, what improvements can be made that are both shorter and long-term to assist on the integration of creative newcomers into Canada. So what are some things that you would suggest that are pretty quick or easier things to kind of do that would aid in that journey or aid in that settlement versus things that maybe would take a little longer but still require attention? Any thoughts on that from the panel?
I maybe have a thought on something that would take a little longer in the sense of making that change, which is when I started to transition and figure out what I would do in the arts, settlement agencies, where there are a lot of settlement agencies that will offer, career counselors or helping you to find work, those kind of things, were really terrible at helping with the art sector. They literally did not know what to do. They were like, I don't know what to do with you. I don't know. It might have bettered, I'm talking about a few years ago, so I don't know what the current situation is. I one time got literally told, oh, you should move to a different sector. What are you doing in the arts? So that is something which is a bit harder to change. We can change that tomorrow. But I think settlement agencies getting a better understanding of what a career in the arts can look like and looks like, and having those connections. I basically looked for those connections on my own. The agencies I went to were honestly no help at the time. So yeah, I think information to settlement, and I know Work and Culture is doing that work, but if there are any settlement workers in here, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. And I think we're all proof that, even though there are a lot of challenges and there are a lot of careers, a lot of barriers, it is a viable career option if someone is ready, and as long as they know what they're stepping into and right now. Right. And that's, I think, also important to acknowledge. There are as you said, Parul, in the beginning, it can be very fulfilling and there are also challenges.
Thank you, Cecília. And that's so important to speak out, right? That arts is a viable career. And we're dealing with not only, we're dealing with global stereotypes, quite honestly, right? There's all of those different ideas that exist, like the starving artist, or, you must be in disarray or undone to be an artist, or you can't survive on your art. And we're living proof that you can. So it's very important. I echo what Cecília said, it's indeed important that settlement agencies, employment agencies that are working with newcomers and refugees are aware of the fact that, these are viable careers, and it's their responsibility to guide you folks in the right direction. Thank you for that, Cecília. Yash, Andrea, anything more on that? And just again on what the improvements can be, both shorter term or longer term, that may assist in that integration?
Yeah, firstly, I like 100% agree with how most of the agencies, the settlement agencies, and the consultants are towards IT. Like the ones that I found are towards IT or either maybe a bit of science and stuff, and they have completely ignored arts and the impact arts have on the economy. Because during COVID, people moved to arts. That was a thing that kept people going, and you just cannot ignore that section. And one thing, while I was in school at Sheridan College, where I did my creative industries management program, I was looking for some co-op opportunities. And when you see the eligibility criteria, so in some of the cases they were getting funding from the government of Canada, and because of that, I think they were part of Canada's summer jobs wage subsidy or something. So if they get funding from that source, that makes newcomers, refugees, and immigrants ineligible to apply for those jobs. So I think if they could open those kind of subsidies for newcomers, refugees, and immigrants, maybe that would help a little, because a lot of jobs are contractual basis, and there are very few full-time jobs. Maybe that would improve the situation.
Thank you, Yash. Absolutely. And I'm going to let Andrea chime in if she has anything, but I want to come back to a couple of the comments that were made by the panelists so far. But before I do that, Andrea, anything from your end that you'd like to offer?
I 100% agree with both Cecília and Yash, especially regarding opening summer jobs. We work with that program, and we've had bureaucratic difficulties exactly of the type that Yash is describing. We had a Ukrainian refugee coming in last year, and it was literally the wrong type of visa that we had challenged to going around with, to the point that in the end our team decided to still hire her and basically pay her from our own contribution, because we just didn't have the heart to say no. So paperwork definitely, and potentially also paperwork that's related with how long does it take for someone to understand how the system functions. I know there's a lot of terminology lately regarding newcomer. What does that mean? Is that a person 3 years, 7 years, 10 years? My take is that it takes about 10 years for a person to kind of have an understanding of how things work. So it takes you back in timeline in life quite a bit. So one thing that would be somehow useful would be maybe have some different points in terms of age limitations for certain programs or certain expectations when it comes to immigrants, because sometimes someone might be moving at a later point, or they might not find the program at the right time. Like Toronto Arts Council has a great grant for immigrants, and I know my particular case how that went. By the time that I understood that there was a Toronto Arts Council and that there is this grant, I was too old for it, and I was not in the right city, and all these different barriers that you just don't understand. So some things regarding how does age impact immigrants and how long does it take to get integrated, I think that's a really important point as well.
And sorry.
Thank you so much. And it's so relevant in terms of accessing opportunities. If they're not there, we can't access them. And you know how unconscious biases still do play a great role in the way that we create our systems. And I think, you know, Andrea, you sharing like ageism, right? That you may be coming into an opportunity at a different point in your life than someone who is considered a young person or a youth. So, you know, how do we allow for folks to have you know, pathways to integrate if they're not necessarily coming from that you know, that particular age group. And also the viability of the conversation, again, what you folks said in terms of just really, you know, honoring what it is that you already know and bringing that into the space. A lot of times I know I've heard from newcomers like the frustration on they already have education credentials and they're coming here and, you know, they may not be able to apply those or have those recognized in this new country. So lots of great points there. Cecília, I'll come to you.
I wanted to add to what Andrea was saying, that I think it's so important to also acknowledge privilege, right? Like we all come with different privileges. When we all come with different with different visas in different situations. So kind of like it's important to acknowledge that what might take someone 5 years, depending on your situation, can take 10 years. So I agree with that. It is kind of unfair to say 7 years is the point where after that you should be settled, when maybe your life situation didn't allow you to, like be able to volunteer, be able to like do really low paying work or internships or things like that. So I definitely think that's a conversation that needs to be had more in the sector, and to acknowledge that different people are going to have different timelines.
Hear, hear. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that's so important that we all honor our own journeys. And that it shouldn't be a formality that, government prescribes to us that, you have to be integrated by 7 years or 8 years, because as you said, Cecília, that process is very different based on, the individual, but also the pathway that lays in front of that individual. And, how long it takes them to, find their way through that, and also access those opportunities. As Andrea mentioned, with her example, like she didn't know about the Toronto Arts Council program until, it was too late. So yes, I can believe a lot of those points you're bringing up is also very important. The disconnection between the reality of, supporting a newcomer versus, how these programs have been situated, and often that they leave folks out as a result of, being quite strict or restrictive in the way that they position themselves. So thank you so much for offering that. To move on to the next question, if I may, and to keep this conversation flowing, I also wanted to ask, can you identify any opportunities, channels, or supports that assisted you in developing your career? Was there a particular space, place, or an individual or an organization that has helped you in your integration journey? And if so, would you be kind enough to share that with the group? Does anyone want to take on that question?
I can jump in, and hopefully Brianne or someone from the work and culture team can put it in the chat, because I know you're very familiar with the organization I'll mention. So for me, ERSA, which is a nonprofit organization built by immigrant newcomer artists for newcomer immigrant artists. I met ITAC, one of the founders of the organization, right in the beginning of my journey, internship and things, and was very privileged to kind of like, help with support with some of the work she's done, and also just benefit from like, the connections. My first gallery job was because of ITAG and a connection she had, and I know that a lot of other artists have benefited from ERSA. So ERSA is definitely a resource. I don't know what they're up to these days, but in the past, I know they've been quite active in that.
Thank you, Cecília. And can I poke at you just for a little bit deeper with that, which is, in what ways were they able to assist you in your journey? What did you find in them that was able to, resonate with you?
I did some of after my internship, some of the volunteer work and contract works I did was with them. So they directly helped me to like build my resume and give me opportunities. I was lucky that at the time they needed some help to set up things. So I was able to use my time for that. And then there's always been, which I always try to do myself, the kind of like constant kind of like, oh, Cecília is looking for a job. I'm going to send her the things that I notice and that I see. And I feel like that's not just come from ERSA and ITAC personally, but other people in the sector too. Parul, you probably did that. So I think that's the other thing. It's kind of like back to the building relations with people and putting out there what you need. Sometimes we can be a bit kind of like, oh, I don't want to burden people with things, but sometimes putting it out there, people will want to help you and they'll try to keep you in mind. And if they remember something, they'll send it your way.
Thank you so much, Cecília. I appreciate it. Yash, Andrea, I want to share a little bit about your journeys
Sure.
and
Yeah.
what may have been you unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we've got you now.
Okay.
We've got you
Yeah,
now.
okay. Yeah. So yeah, what really helped me was I came as an international student, so I had like some resources from my school, like both at Sheridan College as well as Centennial College. So yeah, I saw the comments and people are like asking about like education resources for arts administrators. So I did arts management for Centennial College, and I did creative industries management. That's like a film and television program from Sheridan College. So these were the two schools that actually helped me, and through projects that we did. So we were sort of like, forced to go out and like ask people to help us with our projects, and that actually helped us, meet some people in the industry. I met like a couple of people who then in the future actually helped me for some other projects like that are more deeper and like more engaging. So, and through people you meet new people, like more new people. So that's actually like, really helpful with that. And the co-op that I started with Sheridan College, it actually turned into a part-time job and now a full-time job. So that was the thing that, was really interesting to me. So I think I would say placements, internships, and co-ops are like really important and like, good resource to
Yeah,
take
great
advantage
point,
of.
Yash. I think that's an excellent point, and I can align with you on that as well, that sometimes we make connections and they may not lead to opportunities immediately, but they do connect, into the future. It may lead to an opportunity. So thank you so much for sharing that. Andrea, any thoughts around anything that may have been of value to you in your own settlement?
National Theatre School was a very, very big benefit, but also actually Working Culture and TAPA blog as listing sites for specific jobs, because up to that moment, one of the challenges was also where do you find jobs and gigs in culture? So I would just be looking in general sites, and like even finding general sites was kind of like, okay, how do you do this? And when finally someone who I accidentally bumped into told me about, oh yeah, there is this site called Working Culture, that is where you find the jobs. Not only that it was a possibility to find opportunities to volunteer or to apply, but also to learn about what are all the different organizations. So I literally spent every day I would go on the site and I would take a look what are the jobs, and I would read the job description, and then I would Google the organization that was posting, who are they. Working Culture, it was almost like a study guide of Canadian non-for-profit organizations. And from that, I then kind of started making connections and different network of like, oh, okay, these are all different organizations, and learning about the ecosystem. So Working Culture and TAPA blog were instrumental in that, definitely.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andrea, for sharing, and big ups to Working Culture for the amazing work they're doing and they continue to do, because, Andrea's made this point a couple of times. It's so very important that we have the opportunity to connect and feel supported in our journey. And I think that's just something I just want to quickly mention. Is that, often as we've spoken and admitted, it can be an isolating experience, right? To be a newcomer or be an immigrant. So with that being said, I do really encourage you to don't feel like you have to do it all on your own. Do reach out to, arts organizations, community organizations that are, really keen and really excited to support your journey. It really does make a big difference in terms of that integration and helping you to feel more confident in the Canadian climate. Maybe not in winter, but nonetheless in the Canadian climate. So, it is key. And a lot of these organizations really do take time, such as Working Culture, such as TAPA, to really understand and honor the lens of, what it is like to be a newcomer and to provide, supports and services to assist along that journey. So I know we are almost at a point where we can get to a Q&A period. And maybe I will just leave a couple more minutes for that. And then if we have some extra time, we can maybe fill with one more question at the end. But I do see that I have been, readily paying attention to the chat, and there are so many enthusiastic comments and so much going on there that I would love to ask at this time. Are there any questions for our panelists, or any thoughts or anything that you would like to share at this time? And please, if we can ask you, to pose it as a question, it would be greatly appreciated, so that it can be of value not only to yourself but to those who are also in the session. This is your opportunity. Do we have any questions that we want to present to our panelists?
Absolutely. And maybe before we pop into that, I'm just going to pop on, Parul. Thank you for moving us along and keeping on top of time. I knew that you would. You said you would, and you did it, of course. What I will do now at this point is, graciously thank the guest speakers for sharing their insights today. And just so that folks are a little bit more comfortable with sharing their questions, because I know these are stemming from very personal experiences. I am going to take this opportunity now to turn off the recording so that you can ask your questions freely, knowing that we're not going to be sharing them with the recording. So thank you again to our guest speakers, and recording off.
Thank you